Coming up this week on Meeting Minds, we are diving into how to create real, authentic connections in the virtual event space and how to keep your employees excited and engaged. You're not going to want to miss this week's episode of Meeting Minds.
This is Meeting Minds with Charles Ide. Join Charles as he chats with the leaders in today's event world on how you can take your events to the next level. Broadcasting from the IDECOM studios in Minneapolis, Minnesota, this is Meeting Minds with Charles Ide.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to an amazing episode of Meeting Minds. I am your host, Ashley Hawks. We are live from the IDECOM studios in Minneapolis, and I have a very special guest today. We are still virtual as we are just entering into almost the second quarter of 2021, but we have a very special guest coming in virtually today, all the way from New York City, an amazing, amazing events professional with a ton of experience. And I have a whole list of really great questions. So I'm going to dive right into it. She is a partner at EMRG Media, as well as the producer of the Event Planner Expo, which is the largest trade show for event and hospitality in New York City. It is so wonderful to have you, Erica Maurer. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
So Erica, tell me a little bit about you and how you got started in the events world.
Sure. So I went to Tufts undergrad, and then I wound up going to Columbia graduate school to get my master's, and it was in program planning and development. And I also am a licensed therapist. So as I was doing that, I realized that there was an opportunity in my internship where I was at UJA, and they allowed me, in addition to doing what my normal duties were, but to expand into the nonprofit sector and help with their donor relations. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, this is something that I totally want to do. Forget what I went to school for. And I kind of navigated that way. And from there, I really just took a ton of internships. I really asked whoever I knew in the field, because it was really male dominated at the time. What I could do, I didn't care what it was. And I really just started to learn from the ground up. I knew I liked dealing with people. I knew I was always the organizer of my group and my family and my friends and so forth. And I saw that there was a really big passion there. So I took those skill sets that I learned and I kind of dove into, working actually for the company now that I'm a partner of. Mm-hmm. So if people tell you you can't get there, you can. It just takes hard work and focus. And so I started working at the company. My partner now had a different partner, and slowly they kind of separated. And a few years later, I segued in, and we created and migrated the business into what it's become now, which is a full service events marketing and production agency. And then we really wanted to hone in not only on marketing for venues to help people drive business, but also on the experiences. And so in our industry, there's not that many fun trade shows. There's not a lot to do. And we wanted to take our event planning experience and create an overall trade show experience. So someone could come in and they can meet vendors, they can connect, they can drum up business, they can have cocktails, they can meet interesting people while having an engaging experience. And so that launched our Event Planner Expo, which is now going into the 9th year. So we have a whole, bunch of different sides. We work with major companies like Google, BuzzFeed, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Columbia Records. We do the VMA after parties. We do some really, really fun stuff.
Oh, wow.
We'll do stuff with Kanye. We do stuff, you name it. We did Cardi B's record release party. So it's all very varied, but I think that the whole thing comes down to is that we do all aspects of event planning, and we take our creativity, we take the business side, and then we take the execution, and we marry that all together to create the vision that someone wants. And that's what's really important. And that's what my passion is. And that's where we are today.
Yeah. I watched the 2019 video from the expo. Oh my gosh, that looked like so much fun. Where was that?
So we had our speaking sessions at the 92nd Street Y. It holds just over, I think 1,200 people in the audience. And we had about 30 different speakers. We had Gary Vee as our, as our keynote. We had Jason Pfeiffer from Entrepreneur Magazine. And then we had a ton of high level event planners who spoke, and we kind of did Q&A, and it was really, really engaging. But our trade show in itself takes place at the Met Pavilion. So we curate 3 days of engagement. We do a welcome party. for those that fly in from across the country, that always takes place at Spin. And we allow them to mix and mingle and almost like ice break before the big day. Then we go in and we do this big education day where we allow people to get to know and ask questions and really engage. And then at that event, Gary did like a meet and greet where he signed his book and took pictures. And then we come back to the third day where we have 150 vendor partners who literally do soup to nuts setup, beautiful, lavish decor and so forth. And it gives people the opportunity of going over and really make memorable connections to drive business. So that's what we really do. And then on top of that, we have VIP sections. We have fireside chats. We have a VIP lounge. We really want it to be a full immersive experience and not just something like a cookie cutter, go to a ballroom, table, all looks the same. So ours, that other event is at Met Pavilion. So it's really exciting.
Okay. Now in 2020, you had to take this event completely virtual and you're planning on doing 2021 virtual as well. And you'd mentioned the importance of making memorable connections. Networking is not just about, going around and collecting business cards like they're baseball cards. How do you still create those engaging connections? How do you still create those memorable experiences in the virtual world?
So what we did was obviously in person and virtual are two different forms, right? Completely different. And to say that one is the same as the other, they're not, but they're unique and that's great. So you have to hone it on the strength. So what we did for when we took our trade show virtual, which was 2020, we had Damon John as our keynote. And so we said, we're in a virtual world now. And although the Event Planner Expo is for the events, marketing, and hospitality industry, we are all business owners, first and foremost, right? And what does our industry need? And what do these owners need now? And so what we did was we actually reprogrammed a big piece of it and said, how can we support our community? They need to know how to keep their business open. They need to know strategies. They need to know it's okay to fail and get back up, modifying your business. So what we did was we took a full day and we said, we're going to curate content that will give the owners, the event planners, those people that are trying to survive in a global pandemic, the tools to leave our events and go back and apply them to our business. So we really focused on business tactics, right? And then we curated 2 other days of phenomenal event planners, all sharing their tips, what's going on, what's successful, what are they doing, what can't they do now, how are they pivoting? And so we encapsulated both pieces to create an engaging experience because we did very intimate, like chat engagement. We took questions from the chat. We carefully said, okay, this person wants to ask Damon this. And we really filtered in those questions that in an in-person event, we never would have been able to accomplish that because it just would have had to be pre-curated questions. We wouldn't have been able to filter in the same capacity. So we did have vendor booths. We did have the ability to let people virtually walk a virtual trade show floor. And they could do Zoom meetings. So similar to how like you log in through Zoom chat and you could say, hi, my name is Erica and I sell flowers. And this is what I do. And I could be sitting in my floral studio where all my decor is. So it gave you a little bit of that in person. I'm not going to say truly in person. We couldn't exchange cards, but we could exchange cards virtually and we could leave a message and deliver that information so we can continue the conversation after the event. So it had to be a shift in the thinking because what exists in what I call the real world and what exists in the virtual are not the same. So to say to yourself, you're going to duplicate it, you're not, but you're going to create other really memorable experiences that are going to last. And so that's really what we tried to focus on.
Do you think that you're going to be able to take some of those things that you've learned, right? So being able to like curate those questions, being able to, create connections of people that maybe wouldn't have been able to connect in person. Do you think you're going to be able to take some of those things that you've learned and implement them somehow into live events in the future?
100%. So I'm going to just break this down, right? So when I talked about Damon John, he was our keynote, but we also wound up getting like a Jamie Kern-Lima who founded It Cosmetics. And we wound up getting Kevin Harrington, another shark. And we wound up getting Tim Story, who's like a mentor and a coach to Kanye. We were able to, because it was a virtual world, assemble this magnificent virtual platform, virtual stage, right? And get all these speakers. So now as we migrate back into whatever that new norm is, whether it's a hybrid or, most likely it's a hybrid. We are going to continue that element because we've realized two things. A, you can connect with people, doesn't matter where they are. So by allowing that, you can actually deliver a major stage. Whereas if you're trying to schlep someone in and fly them in and put them up in lodging and they have to map out their whole week and so forth, it changes the accessibility. So what we realized was, although we were stuck apart in a virtual world, it actually opened up access to connect people from across the country and in different countries. It allowed you to connect with speakers who can be all over to deliver these messages back to back to back, where you couldn't curate it like that. And then it allowed you to really niche in and say, what did my audience want? So as we decide what 2020 looks like 2021, as the world opens, we're going to have a virtual component, but we might have an in-person on a smaller scale. And what will that look like? I'm not sure, because it'll depend on what the regulations are, but we'll have something very special and engaging, and sending like wow boxes, where that's something that people just, people used to give gift bags, right? So now the new term is you send wow boxes, and then that wow box can engage with people. So you and I could be opening a box simultaneously as we're launching the event. And as our keynote is opening, there could be elements in that box that you can share on stage. You could capture people's surprises. So although it's different, it's still engaging. It's just really, I think of it as producing a show. We're producing, a movie, we're producing like a play, we're doing segments, we're doing acts. How do you want that show to look? And then that's how you produce it. So it's different production. You can't go and say, oh, I want to take this glass off the bar, right? But you can say, I want this to go in this method. And you can really utilize that to your strength and really curate it in a special way.
I feel like everyone in the events world lately has been obsessing over the audience experience, right? Which is our number one focus when producing an event. You want your audience to experience something, but more importantly, you want them to experience something together, right? There's something special about consuming that message at the same time as hundreds of other people. And if it wasn't the case, we would just send an email or put together a video. But there's something special about getting people together to experience something at the same time. I love your term for the wow box, right? I love that term. But right now, there's such a focus on how do we keep the audience excited at a virtual event, right? Because we're not getting together. We're not, having the cocktails and the lights and the music and things like that. And the focus has been the audience. But I want to ask, how do you keep your employees excited? Because they're event people. They love the in-person just as much as the audience. So what are you guys doing to make sure not only that the audience is excited and engaged, but more importantly, your staff, your employees are just as excited?
So it's kind of in a shift, right? So we're used to being like tactile. We're used to being in person. We're used to running around. So, our team always talks about this. It's almost like a mental shift. So before you used to do events and you'd be tired, physically tired, right? Now you're mentally tired. So it's really just, in my opinion, and our team's opinion, it's checking on our team, making sure they're okay. Sometimes being on a computer can be more exhausting than literally running an event for 10 hours. It's just a different kind of emotionality. So it's just being conscious of that, making sure you're checking on them, making sure, you're really thinking about them. Not that you weren't thinking about them before, but in a different emotionality way, making sure that they're not super exhausted, adjusting things if you see that they're fatigued and whatnot. Because again, being on a computer can be a lot more taxing than it can. Because when you're running around, there's like those emotions that are coming. There's the energy. You don't get that. So it is very different. And that's how we do it, is we really just make sure to be consciously checking in.
That's really good advice. You had mentioned earlier when you were getting started in the events industry that it was a very male-dominated field. And I feel like in the last maybe 10 years or so, there's been a huge shift, and it's a very female-dominated industry. Tell me about, you started a women's community in the events world recently. Tell me about that.
Yes. So as the world was shutting down and the global pandemic was, at its height, women were forced to obviously go home and stay home. And either they were working from home, they were running a business, they were running someone else's business. But more importantly, if they had a significant other or a spouse or children, they were forced to wear all those hats at once, right? It wasn't going to, as much as I'd love to say men are active, and they are, as in parental roles and stuff, it really falls mostly on the women. And that's what's going to happen. So they were forced to kind of shift what they knew as like their norm. And they felt very disconnected. They felt very isolated. They were dealing with a lot of emotionality. And going back from my background, going to Columbia grad school and being a therapist, I was hearing people saying, I'm depressed. I'm sad. I'm isolated. I can't make connections. I'm not able to have my coffee with my friends. I can't go into a social setting and just talk about my business. So we were hearing that constantly. And my partner and I, one of my partners, Jessica, she and I had always spoken about what it would be like to give back to the women's community and how much people need that, having access. And it goes back to the same thing that I mentioned about the expo, having access. So because we've had our company for 20 years, we have access to a lot of great people. And so we said, why don't we take this opportunity to curate a stellar lineup of women? And they're going to talk about not just health or wellness, they're going to talk about business. They're going to talk about their successes and failures. They're going to share inspirational and motivational stories, mindset. Why is that important? Morning routine, all of these things that sometimes you're like, oh, it's hokey. I don't need a morning routine. But especially in a global pandemic, when the world has been turned upside down, in essence, you're experiencing a loss, right? People were experiencing what you would talk about as when you're grieving for a family member, because the world that they knew was different. So we took that opportunity and we said, we're going to test this out as a test pilot. We created Women Insider Network, which is called WIN. The acronym is because we want people to win in 2020, 2021 and beyond. And we put together amazing women to share their stories. And we allowed for the audience to ask questions. Now that's a human connection that they weren't able to have before. And so that's where it started. It went really well. And there was a really big need for it. We created this private Facebook group and all of these different things. And now since then, we did an event in January. We have one coming up. Actually, this Thursday it kicks off, and that's called Aim for Excellence. And on this one, we have 30 women. And so ultimately, what we wanted to do is create an opportunity for people to connect and not feel so isolated in a world where isolation is kind of what we're dealing with.
I love that you have the background as the therapist and you're able to bring that into the events world at such a perfect time where we do. And you're right. I mean, women and men are processing what's happening a lot different. We are very community focused creatures, and just being connected to other people and knowing that you're not alone and just that feeling of like, you're not going through this by yourself, having that sense of unity is so huge. Before we wrap up, I want to know, for those who are just getting into this industry, for those that maybe have been in it for a while and are feeling stuck, or for those that are looking to kind of take their career to the next level or to take their creativity on planning their next event to the next level, what advice do you have for someone in the events world that's looking to push and to grow?
I think to grow is to be educated. And it's okay not to know your next step. And it's okay to feel uncomfortable. Things that are great come after uncomfortability. So when you're pushing and you're like, I'm scared, it's okay. Just take the next step. You'll get there. And that's something that's like, a lot of time it's like getting in your own way. You need to get out of your own way. And you have to say, if this is where my passion is, if this is what I want to learn and go towards, who are the greats? Who can I either be mentored by? Who can I reach out and kind of learn about? Where can I apply my transferable skills? Because we all have transferable skills, right? You can come from any industry and really apply it to another. It's really reshaping that and saying, what can I do? Now, for event planners, a lot of people are still stuck. And that's natural because you get conditioned into knowing what you know. And then you say, well, I don't know this, so I can't do it. So then I say, well, strategic partner. Find somebody who has the knowledge that you need that maybe you don't necessarily want to learn. Maybe you're like, I'm not going to spend a year to get up to snuff on this. That's okay. Partner with someone. So for example, we did in-person events, right? And we had all these clients that we had booked for the corporate world for December that needed to do holiday parties. And everyone was like, nope, not doing a virtual event. Not for us. We're not doing it. We're not doing it. We're not doing it. Finally comes like the end of November, Thanksgiving. Everyone realizes the world is still shut and that they have to create an employee experience. And it actually goes back into values and community and making sure that the employee felt appreciated from a corporate perspective, and also that they were being cognizant of their families. So what we did was we created virtual event experiences, and we incorporated things that were able to be incorporated with kids. So like a mother could bring in their son or their daughter, and we would create that content. So what I say is think outside the box. Think about what the problem is that you're trying to solve and add that into your event. Now that's going to look different, for everyone, but for us, we weren't virtual producers. So what I did was I went out and I said, I know these 5 people. Let me vet them each, because it's very different to come through in a virtual world than it is to be an MC in person. So someone who was really great in what I call the real world didn't necessarily resonate in the virtual world. So I actually had to change part of our team. And I had to say, I needed someone who was 150% energy to get that 100% energy in the virtual world. So where I would go with this is, it's okay to adjust. It's important and imperative to succeed with strategic partnering. They're not your competitors. They are not. They are assets, and together you're going to be stronger. So when you feel stuck, look to your right, look to your left, say, who do I know that does similar things but not the same, and how can we help each other? Provide value. And ultimately, what I would say for people who are starting out, it's going to be a tough road breaking into the events industry. It's not what it used to be. But if you learn all that's out there, you're going to arm yourself in your toolbox to have more skills, so that when the world reopens, you're not only going to know virtual, but you're going to have that transferable skills to also be able to be logistical and then be able to plan in-person experiences. And those are the things that are going to differentiate you. So when I say we had a huge setback, right? The world shut. All of our clients overnight closed. We had to adjust or literally be closed. So we adjusted. And so that is why you have to continue to educate. You have to be willing to make those uncomfortable calls. You have to push through the uncomfortableness and get to the other side, because that's where the greatness is going to be. And think about who is in your network that you can then partner with.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Erica, that is so good. We were just talking about this as a company the other day. We had like our big state of the company meeting, and one of the owners shared the quote, and I cannot remember who I'm sure you've heard this quote before, but it made me think of it when you're talking about partners and we're in this together. They're not your competition. Like, we will be stronger when we're together. And the quote is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And
yes, I know the quote.
I can't remember, and I feel so bad that I'm quoting something without giving proper credit to the person who originally said it. But anyways, that just made me think of that. Tell me how people can connect with you and to learn a little bit more about EMRG. Are you a LinkedIn girl? Are you a Facebook girl? Where can people find you, and how can people learn more about the Women Insider Network?
Sure. So for EMRG Media, you can contact us at emrgmedia.com, but specifically events at EMRG Media. You could shoot us an email. We're happy to discuss any opportunities or anything event related. Or if you have any questions, maybe you're a new planner that's breaking in, you just want to chat with us, we're happy to do that. If you're looking about the trade show, you can also email us at EMRG, or we do have info at theeventplannerexpo.com. That's a little longer. So again, you can go to the EMRG website. And then also for Women Insider Network, it's info at womeninsidernetwork.com. So what I would say is, if anyone's interested, they can always DM me. It's Erica Maurer 77, or just shoot an email to events at EMRG Media. It'll get forwarded to me, and we would love to connect on any front in any way that we can.
And Maurer is Maurer. I was practicing before the podcast, trying to make sure that I said it properly. And I'm like, there's no way I'm saying this right. But the first R is silent. So Erica Maurer. And you know what? We'll put all this info on our website as well. So if you guys go to meetingminds.org, we'll put all the links up there. Sometimes that's a little bit easier. Erica, thank you so much. This was wonderful. I love your energy. I love your insight. I love that you have the therapy background. I feel like all of us in the events world need to have a little bit of therapy in our back pocket. So like I said, we'll have all of this up on our show notes on the website. You guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, my name is Ashley Hawks. I am one of the newer hosts to Meeting Minds, so make sure you guys subscribe. You can find Meeting Minds on all the places. If you can't find a podcast, I'm sure you're watching it on YouTube or wherever, but make sure you hit subscribe. We've got a new episode that comes out every week, and we have some really exciting guests coming up later this month as well. Erica, thank you again. You guys have a wonderful week. This is Ashley with Meeting Minds.
Thank you for listening to Meeting Minds. Meeting Minds. Brought to you by IDCOM Event Production, changing the world one audience at a time. Follow IDCOM Creative and Meeting Minds podcast on Instagram. And check out meetingminds.org to find show notes for this episode, past episodes, and inspiration. As always, please subscribe, leave a review, and tune in next week for another episode of Meeting Minds.